Okay. Welcome everyone to our May Bicep Community Call. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So this is our team. It's always getting bigger. We're going to have some new people on this as well. We might have to make a second slide, but that is okay. We'll deal. We're happy to have more people on the team. Here are our core maintainers. We still love them so much, and they're always working really hard, and we really appreciate you. I can't say that enough. We have 2 new interns and 1 starting on Monday. They'll be working on a really exciting project that Sydney will talk to you about later. Muhammad unfortunately can't make this call, but Sydney is here. So if we can have a warm welcome so she could introduce herself quickly.
Are you on camera?
I'm not on camera.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm a PM intern here this summer, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about my project later in the slides. I currently go to UC Berkeley. I'm from Southern California, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, welcome, Sydney. Did someone have a raised hand, or were they just trying to say hi?
I think it was a wave.
Okay,
I think it's
cool.
the closest thing we have to a wave in Teams.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, I will keep going. I'll leave my camera on for whoever else wants to have theirs on. Again, like I say in every community call, this is for you guys. We're giving updates. We are doing demos. We're sharing what we're going to be working on next. But please be active in the Q&A. You guys always are active in the Q&A, so we're super happy about that. And if you have anything you guys want to talk about, just raise your hands, come off mute. Like we were talking in the beginning, feel free to do that as well. Yeah, this is the more casual connection. We just want to get to know you guys all. Yeah, like I said, use the chat, raise your hands, all of that. All right. One thing I wanted to share, Freek Berson has updated his book. I'm going to put the link in chat to his Amazon listing. You guys don't have to get it. You guys know about Bicep already, but this is Getting Started with Bicep. It's been updated to cover a bunch of the new updates since the first release. And he's been doing an amazing job just being so active. He's done some meetups, so have some of our other awesome contributors. But yeah, we love him. Okay, all right. Alex, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I'm a little under the weather, so if I sound like death, I do kind of feel that way right now, but it's not COVID. At least I'm 99% sure it's not COVID. So 0.7, if you've been on some of the recent calls or paying attention, we're doing monthly cadence releases, which is just like whatever we happen to get done that month, we're gonna stamp it and ship it. So the first one, Johnny, who's one of the newer members of our team, has been doing a lot of work around improving the types and type accuracy as part of a larger effort. So some cool things kind of fall out of that. One is support for something called open enums, which is something that's in the Swagger specifications of the RPs, basically for properties that have a list of known values. So SKUs, or there's a ton of them. Some of them are open and some of them are closed. And closed means these are the 3 values. We know for sure these are the only ones we're going to allow. And that's closed. And then open is we know it's these 3 values, but it could also be something else. And so that's something that the resource providers have control over. And so we're going to honor it for the first time. We just haven't been doing it. Johnny probably has the best assessment of how many types take advantage of this, but it will expose it, and hopefully more teams will take advantage of it now that it's something that will show up in this experience and hopefully others as well. We're also going to be preserving type information for transformations of literal strings. And so what that means is you can have, we have string types in Bicep where a string is just generic. We don't know what the string actually is. And then there's something called literal types or literal strings where it is a string, but it's very specifically the string foo or very specifically the string bar. And when it's a literal string, basically we can do more validation because we know more about it. When you would use these type transformation or these string transformation functions like to lower and to upper, and there are others, we would turn it into a generic string as a result. If you were setting a variable of to low or something or other, we would just turn it into a string. If you hovered over it, we would say it's a string. Now we're able to preserve that type information. It's probably something most people won't notice, but it is actually improving your validation experience. And then a couple of fixes. We were not able to decompile negative integers, and now we can. And we also, this was an annoying bug where if you were using an existing resource, we would force the name to be what we sometimes call a deploy time constant, which basically means we will know about it at the start of the deployment. And for resource names, you do need to have a deploy time constant. So if you're going to create a resource, we basically need to know what that resource name is going to be, assuming all the parameters are passed and resolved. For existing resources, since it's just a reference function in the background, that is not necessarily true. So now we've relaxed this constraint, and you don't need to use deploy time constants for existing resources, which is a good thing. There may be a few other little things that I forgot, but those were the big ones that we seem to have closed in the last month.
We had a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
We had a question from Chris Lewis, from Gregory, saying, what is an example of OpenEnum? I don't know if Johnny wants to maybe give a quick description. You don't have to. I know we put you on the spot.
Sure. I've just got a new headset, so I don't actually know if my mic works.
It works.
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. The classic example of an OpenEnum is like a VM SKU, where it's a very long list of the kinds of virtual machine that you can request. And the important thing is it can be added to over time. So every time a new VM gets launched, they add something new to the SKU. And if you haven't updated your Bicep compiler since that new VM SKU was launched, you would get a warning. But now we know that that's something extensible that they expect to allow new values for in the future, so you will no longer get that warning. But you'd still get autocompletes for the values that your Bicep compiler knows about.
Cool, thanks, Johnny. Any other questions? I think we answered them in this part. Okay, we could put the questions at the end then. I'm not sure what happened here, but
yeah, I keep forgetting to delete the animations on the slide.
Okay, all good.
So next month, June, will be 0.8. The two things, this first one may actually make 0.7, we'll see. The first one is loadJsonContent. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the pattern of using load text content to load an external JSON file and then putting that in the JSON function and then doing whatever you want with it. This is basically a more efficient way of doing that, both from your perspective of typing it and from our perspective of processing it. Basically, we can more efficiently analyze what you're doing, and we can emit a smaller ARM template if we need to. We are seeing some really big ARM templates because we've made it easy to embed content like this. And then we will be switching to a CDN for Bicep artifact downloads. Where this was affecting most people was if they were using AZCLI to deploy Bicep in a CI/CD pipeline where they were deploying many times in an hour. You would hit GitHub's throttling limits for downloading artifacts. Obviously, that's not fun. So this CDN just allows us a place to host the same content where we won't have this sort of restriction and you won't hit that error. For 0.9, Uche literally just gave me permission to say this, and I was probably going to say it anyway, so thank God he gave me permission. We're working on Visual Studio support. It's going pretty well. It seems like it'll be out in July. What that means is it's basically as much of the Bicep VS Code experience that we can move to Visual Studio. There's, as you would expect, weird inconsistencies with APIs between the two tools and things like that, but we are aiming to ship it. And Uche, if you want to speak in more detail, obviously go for it. You're on mute.
Muted, okay. Yeah, if y'all can hear me, hopefully, like, I'm in a big conference room, so hopefully there's not too much echo. But yeah, our timeline we're trying to aim for Visual Studio, and we all know how development goes. We're going to try our very best, and things may get pushed back, but we're trying to aim for the end of June, actually. There's like integration with really awesome tools called like the Azure Developer CLI, and there's different things that we're still creating like to make this like an awesome integrated experience across other developer tools in VS Code. But we're hoping to mainly because we know that a really large percentage of our Bicep customers really enjoy the language features. We're starting off with making sure that the suite of features that we're trying to attack and get into Visual Studio is a out-of-box Visual Studio extension for Bicep that colorizes the file and gives you all of those, tab completions that you're used to. And then support for all of the rest of the suite of things, such as like the insert resource and right-click deploy. That'll have to come later. But I know that a lot of people definitely use the authoring, author your Bicep file. So that's what we wanted to attack first, and hopefully getting to that by June 30th, I hope.
Cool. I'm psyched for that, even though I'm not a Visual Studio user. I'm excited to say yes, we have that. We also think we will get the preview of the Kubernetes provider out in July, which is also cool. We're very intrigued to see what people do with it. We reserve the right to change our minds about how good or not good this thing is. But we do think it'll be out in July, and it's pretty cool. It works pretty well. The 1.0 list hasn't really changed. I just kind of reorganized things. AAD provider is literally in progress, but there's a lot of moving parts to getting that out. So it is going to take us a while. I don't have a clear ETA, but as soon as we have something that's worth sharing, we will share it. And then the build and decompile APIs, I think we talked about this last time, but this work is also scheduled for the relative near term. It probably won't be July, but it might be August. And that will allow the portal to light up, export Bicep from the portal or deploy Bicep from the portal, which we know a lot of people are eager to use. So that's our roadmap, at least at the moment.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. This is something I think someone was asking in chat. Mikolai, if you can please give your demo on loadJsonContent.
Yeah, sure.
You could share your screen if you'd like.
Yeah, I grab my screen. Okay, so I already prepared some simple template with the loadJsonContent, and basically this is an example for deploying a workbook. And well, the workbook takes a serialized string as a JSON, so a little bit problematic, but we can have a function called string that converts the object, and what basically does a loadJsonContent. If I like cut it out and say workbook content, and we will do. As we can see, it's basically an object, and since it's an object, we can also do some content. Of course, you can see it if I go to this JSON file. You can see that I have version, logged items, and also there is some IntelliSense that I can use. It's not a bit working with the items arrays, but yeah, but basically for simple JSON, it's currently working. This is also still not yet fully finished, but we hope get some feedback how to improve it. But at least this first preliminary implementation will work. And thanks to that, we can also do a little bit more complex scenarios. So, for example, we have like a work body for the we can also, since in particular with workbooks, you can split your workbook to list of items you want to put in the workbook, and then you can basically in the items you can concat them and you can run them. Let's just maybe compile the file, and if we open the ARM file, we can see that each file is loaded into a special variables that starts with a $sign. Basically, you could start variables with special signs in ARM, but you cannot do this in Bicep. So this is a good thing that we can do some like special variables that we use internally, and you can see that those JSONs are basically loaded as a plain ARM. And thanks to that, when the deployment did CLI or CLI Azure CLI, when does the deployment, it minifies, so it strips all the spaces, which previously when you did load text content, those spaces were included in the ARM. So right now we are just saving a lot of spaces in your JSONs that are being loaded by effectively stripping them apart, and then they are just referenced to the special variables when in the places where they are used. There's also additional feature that when it comes to the loadJsonContent, that we can use a path use in the JSON path that we can narrow down what we like to load. So for example, if I just specify I want to load only items from that file, the workbook content is now basically an array. It's no longer an object. It's now an array because I don't only add items. I can also add a particular item, and I have it only as one item. So if I do the content, I can see that also for this particular item, the hints that were loaded. So yeah, this is how this functionality looks, and we're happy to get some feedback or some comments, improvements. Okay, that's all I said.
Okay,
Thanks,
sounds good. Thanks, Nikolai. We really appreciate it. Anthony, you have, I don't know if you want me to bring up the slide or if you would just want to share your screen.
I can just share my screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just let me know when you can see it. Can everyone see?
It's still there. There you go.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is really just something I was trying out. I remember back in the January call, there were some comments about Newline sensitivity in Bicep. So I just wanted to build an MVP just to see what it would look like to be a bit more forgiving with Newline sensitivity. My PR has just kind of been sitting there since February, so I'd like to just kind of get people's feedback, like whether we like the direction it's going, whether we just want to keep things as it is, whether there's anything we want to change about it. So yeah, I just wanted to show a quick demo of what it looks like, but the PR is also here. I'll share a link in the chat later, so if you want to give some feedback, that's a good place to do it. Okay, so this is what we have today. This is kind of like the Bicep you're used to seeing. The three areas I wanted to focus on were functions, because I know that functions can be quite frustrating when you're kind of forced to put everything on one line, especially when you have like nested functions inside each other. And then arrays, I think for some of the simpler arrays, like it would be very convenient to be able to put them all on one line. And then with objects, particularly like objects with a single item inside them, I think would also be useful to be able to declare them on one line. So just to show what this functionality looks like, it's not super exciting. Functions are pretty much what you'd expect. If I had a new line, I can put my subscription on a new line here. I can put my RG name on a new line. And really, you can kind of put as many. Oh, maybe you can't. I guess you can only put one new line in. Maybe that's a bug. But yeah, essentially that's it with functions. You have an optional new line that you can put between parameters if you want to. So that gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of achieving the formatting you want, especially when it comes to splitting things across multiple lines. So that's what functions look like. Again, if anyone wants to, the PR's out there. I've put some instructions in how you can download this and install it yourself and play around with it if you want to give more detailed feedback. For arrays and objects, it's a bit interesting because we have no delimiter between the items in arrays and objects. So there's no comma, obviously. And like if you kind of imagine what this example is going to look like on one line without any commas, it's a bit strange looking. So the direction I was thinking here was basically allow an optional comma. So I can do that if I want to. I don't have to for the multi-line syntax. So it's basically an optional comma. And I can definitely see some back and forth on like people loving and hating that, maybe hating, but that's how it's working today, and this is all like up in the air, obviously. So there's an optional comma, and then if I have the comma in, I'm then kind of free to format that as I want. Like I can stick it all on one line. I can have a trailing comma, or I can not have a trailing comma. But if I try and put two things together without a comma between it, it complains. So basically, and I'll show you the same with objects as well. So yeah, I can do the same thing with objects. I can have a trailing comma there. I don't have to have a trailing comma. And then if I try and just do that, it complains. And my feeling there is just that is pretty confusing. Like especially if you imagine a larger object with nesting, having no sort of delimiter between things, I think is just going to become difficult to work with. So that's my justification for putting the comma in. So yeah, that's really it. I'll put a link to this PR in the chat. So if you want to give feedback yourself, or if you want to play around with it yourself, then that's a good place to do so.
And one thing I would add here is it would be fairly straightforward for us to add some linting rules specific to this to have stricter behaviors. If you cared about that as an organization, you could say no commas or always commas or whatever.
Yep, that's a good point. I see someone has their hand up, Stephen.
Yeah, so that's where my mind goes, is immediately there are going to be linter rules, and it'll be frustrating. We see this with all the other languages. Now, what was the reason for deciding not to use commas in the first place?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that. That might have been the most discussed thing in the whole Bicep language, quite possibly. Like honestly, we sat down and we looked at it, and we just kind of liked how clean that was. With multi-line arrays, we just it's clear where the object starts, where each element starts and ends, and so there just wasn't a need to put a comma in. But obviously, this is one case when you start to want to take the Newline sensitivity away, that it becomes difficult to reason about that decision. And Alex and Martin probably also have stuff to share about that decision, but we went back and forth on it for a long time.
I blacked out. I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally prefer to have one way to do things. I think isn't that a design principle for Bicep? Totally.
I think people have got used to the lack of commas, and I think it would be quite difficult to reintroduce them at this point, like as a mandatory thing.
So are there any parsing issues with going without commas on a single line?
The place where there are parsing issues are if you're kind of partially complete. Because there's nothing to really, like if your parser gets out of sync because you're halfway through typing a value or you're halfway through typing a key, then the comma provides you a way of like syncing up the parser and parsing the rest of the document. So without delimiters, you end up with like the rest of the line basically being incorrectly detected or formatted. That's kind of what you lose by not having delimiters.
And you think what's the likelihood of being able to automatically, say, add a comma if you delete a new line? I mean, at worst, I suppose you could have a light switch that allows you to change between multi-line and single line, but
yeah, that's good feedback. I'm not sure about that. Not sure about what sort of options we have. Yeah, you're right. Like a light bulb may be an option. I'm not sure if someone presses backspace, whether we have any ability to take control there and put in a comma. We definitely could have some like code actions to go from like single line to multi-line. But yeah, no, I can see the comma is definitely I think the most contentious part of this. But I think to me it feels like the question is like, do we want to allow flexibility to split things to put things on a single line with commas, or do we not want to?
I'm gonna put. Are there things that I guess? Do we want to vote on the proposal as is and get some reactions to it? Like, should we ship this or not, and make it binary? I'm wondering if that's the most helpful way to get good feedback on this, other than the anecdotal feedback. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to type 2 messages, ship it as is, and then I'm going to type don't ship it as another one. And so if you don't want it as is, you should upvote the second message. And obviously that's not science, but it's as close as we're going to get to science today.
Uche.
No, I just wanted to mention that I think like, at least for multiple items, I mean, it might be silly, but for multiple items, having that space there, yeah, it does look silly enough for me to go, could that lead to errors down the road? Or if there should be like a mandatory comma if you're going to do multiple things on the same single line, you know?
Yeah.
That's my only contention point. I think the optional for when you hit enter, when you have line breaks, that just making it optional and like you don't have to have commas is great. But then I think if you're going to choose to do a list of things, 6, 7 things, and you don't have commas between it, that one feels weird. And I think that's the one I would want to have commas. Does anyone have a comment on that? That's the only point of contention.
Yeah, I agree with that. And his point of partially completed lines is also a very good one. As is, I say, Mikolai's comment about pasting JSON.
Okay, well, I don't want to take too long on the call, so I'm thinking maybe we can just continue the discussion in the PR. It's obviously an MVP at the moment, so I think there are some good points about, for example, having linters in place before we release it. But we'd definitely welcome any feedback if anyone wants to share any on the PR.
Okay. Yeah, this is awesome. This is really, really good, Anthony. And thank you so much. Definitely getting a lot closer. We're down to like only a couple scenarios that we are still like, but if overall it seems like people are going in the right direction, or like in the direction that we all want.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I don't know if we want to get any opinions from those who didn't want it shipped. Anthony, do you think you're fine with how it is now?
I think if like I definitely would welcome like the opinions that we shouldn't ship it, but just to avoid taking time, I think it'd be good if you could comment those on the PR itself that I put in the chat.
That'd be great. Yeah, I saw that. Cameron Black, if you want to share your opinions in chat or in the GitHub issue, that'd be great. But, yep, and Newline insensitivity. All right, so on to our next topic. We have 2 different interview signups that we would love for you guys to sign up for. This is for feedback from us. So this first one that I am trying to get people to sign up for, it's going to be a longer, more general, informational about how you're using Bicep and what you are struggling with, what you like about Bicep. We would love to hear from you. It would also be good for you to convince us of the issues that you're having that we're not really focusing on. So be good for prioritization, but definitely want to know how you're using Bicep and how you're liking it so far. So please sign up. I will put this link in chat for you guys. And yeah, we'll move on to Sydney.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm also a little bit sick. Please sign up for a Bicep parameters feedback. So this is going to be a little bit shorter. It's supposed to be about 30 minutes. And the goal of this is for me to learn a little bit about how you guys currently use parameters in your Bicep templates, what you guys like and don't like about having to do them in JSON, because this summer my intern project with the other software engineering interns is to bring parameters native to Bicep, which is something that has been highly requested on the GitHub. And so we're listening to you, and just as some preliminary work, I'd love to hear about how you guys are using them. So please sign up for my feedback session. These will be over the next couple weeks. So yeah, this will also be in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah, so the Bicep params, aka.ms/Bicep params, is for the parameters, and aka.ms/Bicep interviews is going to be for just the general Bicep feedback. And we're probably going to talk about this more in the next following months when we're actually going to get started on it. So please, yeah, we would love to, you could get started with us. You could design it with us, which would be really great. Uche, you have a question?
Not a question, just praise.
Oh, yes, thank you, Sydney. We got to thank our interns. They're going to be doing an amazing job this summer. We're super excited for it.
Yeah, great job, Sydney. I also wanted to make sure I mentioned to the Bicep community call and all of y'all. We just recently finished a loop on the Bicep doc talk, which you may have seen about a month ago, but some of y'all did sign up for the Bicep doc talk to help walk us through how you generally use Bicep documentation. You know, some do use it a lot, some don't use it a lot, and there's so many awesome things we learned, such as stuff like just how much people use the template reference documentation to see exactly all the properties of a resource. Just all of those great learnings. And so we really can't thank y'all enough that when you do take the time to sign up for these interviews, take time out of your precious schedules. And some of y'all live in Europe. So I mean, that's like a common thing. We're like, what time is it where you're at? And they're like, oh, it's like 7 p.m. or y'all would say 1900. But it really helps our team like so much. And I can't express enough how much we appreciate your time and effort. And anytime y'all sign up for these interviews, you really do shape and help the rest of how we execute for months. So just thank you so much. And if y'all ever have the time, please do click on those links. And whenever these interviews come through, do understand that it really, really does help us, and we really appreciate it. So don't think it's like oh, here it comes again, another link to some interview no one even cares about. It's like, no, we just had like an hour-long discussion about everything y'all said. So thank you so much, and please keep that up. The community is a really big reason why Bicep has been so successful so far. And I'm just a new addition pretty much to the team, and I'm still like, wow, this community is very lively compared to any other product I've ever been a part of. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Uche. Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Uche said, we loved meeting with all of the people who signed up for these interviews. It's a chance for you guys also to talk directly to our team and tell us about your worries. And it allows us to prioritize correctly based off of what you guys want. So if you want something done, come come convince us, and we'd love to do it. All right, we have 30 more, 44 more minutes, or sorry, 24 more minutes to talk about the rest of our information. So we're going to go over updates and then have a Q&A. We didn't have the time to go through some of what was requested in the previous month's GitHub issue for this community call. So we're going to talk about it here and tack on the ones that that were asked for this call. So Alex, if you could take it away.
Cool. So the first one, another update on what if bugs. Basically, we introduced a change to be able to process more of the template if it had funny, or not necessarily funny, but uses of the reference function that we couldn't process. We're able to process a little bit more of them. It's not as much as we would like. We then found a regression we introduced with that, so we had to roll it back, and now we've reintroduced it. So it's still, there's a long way to go there. When we do aspire to fix it, we don't have an ETA for it, but this is more to say that the fix that we had introduced earlier that we rolled back is now re-rolled out. The insert resource via Bicep CLI, so this is a capability that only exists in the VS Code extension, and we should have known better. We should always ship every feature in both clients. This one seemed like it made more sense just in VS Code, but there are definitely valid use cases for doing it via CLI. So this is committed. We want to do this. It's not scheduled. So if anybody's able to pick it up, we would be happy to kind of help you understand what needs to be done there, but we're likely not going to be able to pick it up quickly. Strong typing for parameters and outputs. I think this is one that we've always wanted to do, but haven't been able to prioritize. And with the introduction of the public registry in particular, which is still, we're pretty thin on content there. And part of the reason why is a lot of these modules are using object or array of object parameter types, which we can't really validate effectively because those objects and arrays of objects have no schemas. So we need to expand the type system and how you can interact with it pretty significantly. And I think we've upped the priority of this in our heads internally, but the work is still not scheduled. So we really want to do this, but don't have a clear ETA. And Chris, I see your hands up, and I know you specifically asked about it. So if you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, I just keep looking at this as where do my templates break?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what makes my life hard? And one of these things is as you get into more and more complex templates, you're dealing with objects because, well, doing things as variables and saying, you know, and doing this all and that becomes really problematic. So this concept of a JSON object or an object that we can then point it to a resource and say, I want it to look like this thing, you know, the storage account SKU or whatever it is, just makes tons of sense to me that this is, you know, and the interesting thing about it is that I keep talking with my Terraform friends and they're, you know, they do the same thing in the tvars file where they've got this big monster nasty JSON block with no way to confirm that it's a correct JSON block.
Right.
You know, and in the arms race between the two, this would be certainly a huge leg up.
Yes. Well, we're all friends and we all love each other.
Oh, I know that. Yes, I know that. I just want to be better than them.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. And I think I think we need to probably get this done before 1.0 in an ideal world. I don't think we need to get it done before 1.0, but I think to your point, it's going to be like a night and day difference between the code you're writing before this and the code you're writing after this, because we'll be able to do much more advanced things and validate them properly so you don't fail at deployment time. So I think we're totally in alignment, to be honest with you, and it's just a matter of getting it done.
So that sounds great.
Cool. Thanks for jumping in. List manipulation and Lambda functions. I think list manipulation in particular, we definitely feel this is a gap in what Bicep can do right now that we need to resolve. Again, it probably should be done before 1.0, but is not strictly necessary for 1.0. And Lambda functions are kind of part of that story. And I don't think we've done enough due diligence to know how much these are two separate issues or actually just one issue, and it speaks to both needs. So no material update here other than we agree something needs to be done here. Password generation. We do get a decent number of asks for this. Terraform has a random number generator provider. I think it's a borderline pit of failure to use the random number generator as your password generator in Terraform. You have to put that randomly generated number or whatever into state. It's just not a great way to handle it, in my opinion. But people ask for it in part because that thing exists. I think our stance is that we as the Bicep and ARM deployments team don't want to be responsible for generating passwords. It's not our core competency. We don't want to get in trouble. It's just not worth us messing with this. We think the Key Vault team is the appropriate team to do this and to provide some API to do this in a safe way. So there's no material update to this one either. We were pretty clear on the issue that we don't want to fix this. I get that it's a pain point, and we need to kind of focus our feedback towards the Key Vault team. If this is a significant enough need, we should hopefully be able to get them to prioritize it. And certainly, and Aaron speaking to this, you can generate passwords outside of the deployment in all sorts of different ways, and those are good options to do inside of a pipeline. Conditional use of Key Vault of the get secret function. I think we owe you guys an investigation into how difficult or easy this is. I get that you can do this in ARM templates and not in Bicep, so I think we do need to spend some more time looking into it. We'll get you an update at the next call once we've kind of costed it a little bit. And then there's a bug around copy indexes with complex combinations in the for expressions. This will get fixed. I hope it's in 0.7, maybe it'll be 0.8, certainly before 1.0. So that one will for sure get fixed. Any questions about any of those updates?
I'm proud of you for remembering that much information, Alex.
Yeah, well, when you've been around since day one and you've been at this fun company for almost 8 years now, you're just loaded with random, borderline useless knowledge.
Or he says that while he has a text open on the side that he can read from.
Yep, that's true. I have my book of.
That's how I take my meetings.
Yeah, I script everything I say 90% of the time. So
this one too? What you're saying right now?
Yeah, I scripted that. No.
It's like that scene in Spaceballs where they catch up to themselves in the movie Spaceballs.
Oh, that's a mind trip. Oh my god.
But yeah, does anyone have any questions or want any more information? Because it was you guys who had asked for these updates. I don't know if there are enough information, but please, it's the time for question and answer. So if anyone has anything they want to talk about, any response to what Alex had said, anything from our call, please raise your hand or even just come off mute.
And by the way, y'all can actually, I mean, I just learned this today. And I actually work at Microsoft, if you can believe it. But because of the PowerPoint Live features, as we're going through the slides, you can click on any and all of the links. So like they're actually clickable. And I was like, oh, which is different than when you share your screen. So yeah, I've actually been clicking on all these links and reading through them real quick too.
Yeah, I turned off. Okay, you guys can scroll through the entire presentation if you would like right now. But yeah. If there are no questions, we can also end early, but it's up to you guys. I don't know if Cameron wants to explain a little further about what he's having a problem with the Newline insensitivity, but really up to you guys. This is for your time to talk to our team. Yeah, Brian?
I guess I didn't need to raise my hand. So I asked a question earlier about the chances of a transpiler being built to go from Bicep to YAML, especially for ADO. Is that anything that you could see happening down the road? Does that even make sense?
I have a question on that. So you I think you were the one who asked in the chat, right?
Yeah.
So are you looking, because you said it would be ADO YAML, are you looking for us to like compile a Bicep file into a YAML pipeline, or what? Like what's the scenario here?
Exactly. Because just recently, so quite honestly, I personally have not done much as far as infrastructure as code, nor setting up YAML pipelines. I've always done pipelines using the classic editor, but I just had a project that required both things. And seeing as though I kind of had to learn both things at the same time, Bicep was 10 times easier and faster to get the hang of than trying to go through some of the YAML troubles that I went through.
Yeah, so the interesting challenge there is kind of the YAML is intended to be as a way for you to like script a set of steps in a pipeline. And Bicep is more about like basically declaratively deploying a bunch of resources. So like in a YAML pipeline, you would have a step that basically will say like deploy to Azure after you've like pre-configured some things. That could deploy the Bicep file, and that would deploy your resources. But it's kind of like a bit outside of our scope to kind of generate the YAML pipeline, I think.
I guess I just like syntax and the IntelliSense and the support that's built into
Yeah.
It's way better for Bicep than it is for YAML, which is kind of surprising.
So Brian, could you check that link there? And is that something you've referred to in the past? I think what you're describing is a pain point that Azure developer tooling is currently working on, which is more of a, it's kind of out of the scope of Bicep specifically, but it's sort of a higher level. And I also work on a few products that are more in the Azure developer tooling space. But it's more in the, like if you take a step back, the ability for a customer with a CLI to be able to say, make a command like, I don't know, Azure up, and it would create some of those things, including a Bicep file and like pipelines and maybe a sample code or whatever. So I'm wondering, are you talking more about that, like as a starting point as a developer? Or are you mentioning like, I really want my Bicep file to become basically because if that's the case, like you want your Bicep file to basically become a configured pipeline with all the resources in Azure connected to maybe your app or something. Is that kind of what you're saying more so, or is the link that I sent you basically exactly what you were looking for?
So that link, I mean, I had seen that, and that's more specific to actually, I think, running the, your Bicep scripts. But I just like the syntax as a whole. And so I guess I was thinking more like, how Bicep transpiles down to ARM. Similar concept, but transpiles down to YAML. And I know it's a slightly different paradigm, but ultimately what I was trying to build was just a singular pipeline that could, build all my code, test all my code, deploy all my code, tear down all my code. And that's basically what I ended up doing, but I had to kind of, there were some pain points in trying to wire all that together.
Awesome.
Put together like ad hoc environments and that sort of thing.
Awesome. So Brian, feel free to email me, check my alias and feel free to email me. I'll put it in the chat. We probably have some really interesting people you could talk to on the developer tooling side, because what you're talking about is something that we're currently working on. I think because of you mentioning this problem, it'll be great for you to be maybe a contact and sort of help us shape that idea. Like it's kind of funny. You're literally talking about something we're currently working on in the developer tooling space.
Awesome.
But maybe not exactly compiled down to from Bicep to YAML, but pieces of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I totally get like it's two slightly different paradigms, and it's not as simple as it's not the same concept. But yeah, that's awesome. I'll definitely email you.
I think the context that I would add is it is at least theoretically possible to do what you're describing, Brian, but you hit it. It's the fact that it's different runtimes. It would almost need to be a different file extension. It could feel like Bicep and work like Bicep, but it needs to be clear like that this is for this purpose and that's for that purpose. One kind of close analogy is what HashiCorp did with Terraform. So the language is HCL, HashiCorp Configuration Language. They have Terraform, so you have .tf files. And then they've introduced this project called Waypoint, which is basically CI/CD pipelines with HCL, is at least how I think about it, or at least the CI part of it. And so you're still writing HCL code, but I think it's a .waypoint or whatever the file extension is. So that is theoretically possible, and it's definitely an interesting thing to think about because authoring YAML pipelines suffers from most of the same problems as ARM templates, although on a smaller scale, I would say, because the second you have expressions, so the ability to load variables or whatever that you've shoehorned into a YAML file, you introduce all the problems that we saw with ARM templates. So it makes sense, at least in theory, to have something that sits at a higher level that's more type safe. But Uche can take those conversations where they go, but on the Bicep side, it's not something that we're ready to work on.
All right. And what you said makes perfect sense. And ultimately, what I noticed was that once I brought my IAC code, which I had done prior to setting up pipelines, once I brought it all together, I found all of this configuration level code bubble up, and it made sense to kind of have it bubble up to the pipeline level to inject.
Yeah.
In.
And the other part there, I guess there's a project to run GitHub Actions locally, like it'll set up a container image and run. It's the same container image of the self-hosted agents. And so you can run your pipelines locally. I think a lot of the pain there is that it's just, you end up like committing random lines of code to run your pipeline again. And it's a very frustrating dev test loop.
That's exactly what I did. And somebody had mentioned in the comments that you can use the portal. And that's what I was doing. I was literally like just entering a line, committing the file, letting the pipeline run, and then.
Yeah, and you see people will share screenshots of their day where it's like trying again, this failed, maybe this will work, and it's like clearly there's something wrong. You're abusing how the system was supposed to be used.
I appreciate a lot what you guys have done with Bicep. So.
Thanks.
Of course. Thank you.
Aaron?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Just a quick question. I'm not sure if this has been covered in previous calls. I've been doing quite a bit of authoring with Bicep and with modules, the common Azure resource modules, and building quite large environments. The code is abstracted as you'd expect. I was just wondering, have you guys seen any limits with the level of depth and size and complexity of templates before it starts breaking? Is there any sort of recommendations or limits we need to be aware of that you've seen? It's just sort of crossed my mind a few times, and so basically, where's the limit of where we can, how big our Bicep, templates and module embedding and structures and all that can get before it breaks?
I think the big thing we see, Mikkel, I just put it in the chat, is the 4 megabyte template limit, and things like loadJsonContent is a great way to optimize that so you don't hit it as often. There are, I'll never say there are not other limits because we seem to find ones that we never thought would exist. But we've removed at least a bunch of them, some of the most painful ones around nested deployments and things like that. But
yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah, nested deployments, complexity of deployments. Yeah, 800 resource limits, all that kind of stuff. I wonder, because under the covers it's still ARM, right? So I'm just wondering if the ARM limits still apply. I guess they probably do.
They do, yep.
Yeah,
the other limit that's in that equation is there's an internal job size limit, and it's really hard to kind of look at a template and know that you've hit that. But the more stuff that you start to put in one Bicep project, the more likely you are to hit that. We don't see it a ton because you have to do certain things with nested deployments where you start to hit it. But there's other ones that are there as well. And as we start to see those get hit, we're going to have to, kind of peel some of that stuff back.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
I think we have some more questions in chat. Alex, I don't know if you want to respond?
Kelly's question about conditionally testing resource existence, that is a topic that certainly comes up reasonably often. No change in strategy there. We really don't want to do that because you shouldn't have to. That burden should not be on you and kind of violates really some of the core principles of what declarative deployments should be about. Obviously, that purity can go too far sometimes, and maybe we're being too pure on this one. But we will need to be dragged across that finish line, I guess, to work on that. Keep putting examples of where you're running into that. So there's a GitHub issue. I'll try to find it right now. So it's always good to get more of those. Most of them are bad API designs or bad API implementations. So we try to push that back to the RP teams, but obviously they have their own backlogs and priorities and things like that. So no real update, but I will share the issue so you can share any of your examples that you've run into.
I'll also ask a quick question in the chat. Oh, so someone has something?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in. I haven't been on a call in a while, and I haven't been using it in a while. But I was calling out that example where you have to use a lot of resource IDs. An example I gave is the App Gateway. And basically, it's a lot of nested resources that have to reference each other, and it's kind of super ugly and really. And I see that example hasn't improved any since the last time I looked at it. So I'm just wondering if that's, and I realize some of that problem has to do with the way App Gateway was built in terms of their architecture of their ARM payload or whatever it is they need. But I'm wondering if there's any work happening with those teams to resolve that.
There's no work happening that I'm aware of. But there is an issue to allow self-referencing, and the tough part is it's really only for this resource type that has just an atrocious API design. Sorry if there's any of the network RP team on this call. It's a really old API design, and it desperately needs to be updated. And we really don't want to build a feature just for that, but if it reaches a certain point, we're open to it. So I can share the issue on that one as well.
Okay,
yeah, that'd be a good one to build a list too, because actually NRP has like a couple resources that do that. I think all of them, the cases I know, are in NRP, but there's more than one. So if we start to build that list, that may also help to get the necessary support to go and help people understand the pain.
Okay, anything else? What is happening with the public Bicep repo? Seems like only a couple modules exist. I don't know if Berson, you want to touch on that?
I think we talked about this a little bit with the discussion around strong typing. We want to align the content in the Carmel repo or the Azure/resource modules repo with what we want to put in the public registry. We actually just want it to be one thing. So we started the process of kind of moving from point A to point B, and it really exposed how gnarly the experience can be without good typing for parameters, complex parameters. So we're resolving a few different things to allow us to speed up adding content to the registry, but it will be a place where we have a lot of content that we publish for projects like Azure Landing Zones and others. If nothing else, it's worth it just for that. So we're going to work towards that, and hopefully some momentum will start to build there, and hopefully eventually we can allow more community contributions or enable community contributions somehow. But it's still pretty early days for sure.
Is there a place where the documentation is for how to contribute to the public repo?
External, like non-Microsoft FTEs, we're not taking contributions.
Curses.
Yeah, you can submit proposals, and those proposals can have code in them. But we're just while we sort through all the kind of CI development and making sure it's working as expected, and we're getting the type of code that we expect to see on the other end, we're limiting contributions for now.
All right, anything else? Sorry?
I'm reading this last comment, but I don't think it's a question. I think it's just a comment, so we can keep going.
All right, well, we are at time, so yeah, if you have any other questions, you can come to our next community call, but it looks like that's fine. So again, thank you so much, Sydney, and welcome. We are so happy to have her here and have the other interns. They're going to introduce themselves next call. So you can always watch that or come watch it also. All right, thanks everyone for coming.
Bye, thanks
See you
all.
next month. Bye.
Thanks for all the good work.